everyone. Welcome to the Dreamcatcher podcast, a place where your dreams can find a voice. When it comes to pursuing our goals, mindset is everything. Whether you're trying to find a new job, develop healthier relationships, or get fitter, we need to think like a winner. And that means stepping away from our excuses, developing practical strategies to grow, and overcoming obstacles that tend to get in the way. And if this is something that you would like to grow and emulate, then you're going to love what my guest, Brittany Wagner, is going to share with us today. Brittany Wagner is a nationally respected athletic academic counselor and motivational speaker, best known for her role as the breakout star of the hit Netflix documentary series, Last Chance U. Brittany guided many young men to academic and professional success, despite run-ins with the law, extreme poverty, abandonment, and often a complete lack of academic preparedness. Brittany has been featured in ABC's Nightline, The Dan Patrick Show, GQ, The New York Times, The LA Times, and Sports Illustrated, to name a few. In this episode, Brittany is going to motivate us with her experiential wisdom in everyday situations. She'll offer tools, tips, and strategies that will embolden us to pursue our goals and put in the work necessary to make our dreams come true. And if you like what you heard, please don't forget to like, rate, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Thanks. Hi, Brittany. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing terrific. You know, I've spoken to all kinds of coaches and counselors, but I've never spoken to an athletic academic counselor. You're actually the first one on the show. And might I add, you're one of the best out there.
Well, thank you. It doesn't surprise me that I'm the first on the show. I think that profession goes unnoticed. A lot of people don't even know it exists. And until Last Chance U came out, it was kind of just ignored, that position. So I'm glad I'm representing.
And I'm really excited that you're here with us to share your knowledge and your story with us. And it's just going to be great. I'm really looking forward to it.
Thank you. Me too.
So, Brittany, you starred in an acclaimed Netflix documentary series called Last Chance U. Take us back and tell us the events that led to this experience.
So I was an academic counselor, athletic academic counselor. I worked with athletes for over 15 years. And at the end of that, I found myself in this tiny little town called Scuba, Mississippi. It's population about 400, tiny little place in the middle of nowhere in Mississippi. And there was a junior college there, East Mississippi Community College. I was hired there, and we were hired to kind of build a program where we helped troubled athletes. We certainly had some athletes that weren't in a troubled spot, but a lot of the athletes we had been kicked out of a prior institution or had run-ins with the law, had academic issues. And here they were at our place at this junior college to get kind of, rehabilitated in order to get to the next level, to Division I athletics and then maybe professional. And so I was there and had been doing that job for 6 years at that institution. And we led the country with the most athletes. We had gotten the most athletes to the next level than any other school in the country. And so GQ magazine did a feature story about our program and what we were doing. And from that, Netflix bought the rights to it. And we filmed 2 seasons of the hit documentary Last Chance U.
Wow. And is this something you always wanted to do? Did you feel like that this was your calling?
I don't know that I knew what I wanted to do. I'm not, I went to college. I was an undecided major my freshman, sophomore year in college. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what my calling was or if that was even real. I didn't really know. I don't know that I bought into people having a calling even. And then I graduated from college and still really didn't know what I wanted to do, which I think is normal. I think a lot of college kids go through that.
Yeah.
And I went to grad school, and it was in grad school where I took an assistantship, a graduate assistantship in the athletic academic office. And it was there. I mean, I was probably, I don't know, 21, 22 years old. And I was watching another very strong, independent female do a fantastic job at managing and helping these athletes. And it was there in that office as a graduate assistant where I realized, like, this is, I like this, and I could be good at this, and this is what I want to do.
Wow, that's great. That's inspiring. That gives, that gives hope to people who really don't know what they want to do in their lives, especially the younger listeners who are listening to this episode. I mean, I can relate to that, because when I first enrolled in college, I was a finance major, and I'm not good with numbers. And I'm just now, I'm in retrospect, I'm like, what was I thinking? Because it takes a while to really understand like what your strengths and what your weaknesses are, and what kind of profession you'd really enjoy. So it's great that you were able to find that along the way. And Brittany, I'm curious to know. So as an athletic academic counselor, you worked closely with these college students. What were the challenges that you had to help them overcome? I would imagine that there were a lot of internal barriers that might have kept them from really excelling in the academic sphere. So what were can you tell us what were some of the issues that you had to help them overcome?
Yeah. Some of them were academic. We were actually in the second poorest county in the United States. So extreme poverty, which when you have these rural areas or these areas that experience extreme poverty, a lot of times the schools are lumped into that category. And so they're underprepared. They're not getting the same education as other students in richer or more wealthy areas are. And so we were dealing with a lot of students who had trauma in their lives from just being in a low socioeconomic class, trauma from not knowing where their next meal was going to come from, trauma from homelessness, and being kicked in and out of houses and homes. And therefore they would transfer to different schools, because as they would get evicted from one apartment and move to another apartment, now they were moved to a different school system. And so they were trying to fit in. And so we were dealing with students with those issues. I was also academic issues as far as not being able to read, or not ever being taught how to divide. And so now you're sitting in a college algebra classroom and you don't understand the concept of division. And you think that you're dumb, and something's wrong with you because you don't even understand that it's a concept that you were never taught. And so there were academic issues like that. And then there were also, like you said, deeper emotional issues, abandonment, abuse in some situations, just the fear of not being enough, the fear of not making it in the way that society or your own community expects you to make it. Mm-hmm. A lot of times these athletes are told, especially if they're really good athletes, they're told at a very young age, you better be good at this because you can't be good at anything else. And so they're kind of pushed in the realm of being really good at their sport because their community and their parents are doing the best that they can, but they think like this is your avenue out. This ball is going to help you get out. And they don't really feed the child with the notion that they can be smart or they can be successful or that there's a different path that they could take. Mm-hmm. And so you have all of this pressure, the pressure of a community, the pressure of a family, the pressure of a school on these kids to make it, to be something. And, we all struggle with confidence and with the belief that we're that great at anything. And so athletes are no different. They excel on the field, but a lot of times mentally there is a self-confidence issue there, and they push themselves in that area because of the fear of not being enough in another area. And so I dealt a lot with that, of just the fear of failing. And so sometimes in order to not fail, they wouldn't try. If I don't try, if I don't show up, if I don't really put forth effort, then you can't say I failed. You just will say I didn't show up. And so you had kind of the self-sabotaging going on with some of these athletes in order to not be called a failure.
Wow. So, how did you go about helping them? Was it just you? Because it sounds like they were dealing with a lot. So, I mean, did you take on all the responsibility to help them get through all these issues that they
I was
had?
the only athletic academic counselor at this school. I had
Wow.
200 athletes, and I was the only one. Now,
Whoa.
obviously, you have coaches that understand to some extent sometimes what's going on. You have other faculty that
Yeah.
obviously help with the academic side of it. And then there were times where we would have to pull in a professional psychologist,
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Were
to
there
help with
psychologists? Yeah.
deeper issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, there are athletic academic counselors all over the country. Every NCAA regulated school has to have them. It's mandated by the NCAA. And they are dealing with this today. I mean, every day they are dealing with trying to help these athletes navigate college life and beyond.
Okay. And how did you develop trust with them? Because I would imagine like these teenagers, like were they a little bit like cautious? Did they have a wall that you had
Yeah.
to get through?
Yeah, a lot of them had been abandoned or had people that they thought wanted to help them, and then they found out they were just there for the ride. They were
Yeah.
there.
Uh-huh.
And so there is a little bit of that time where you're developing trust or you're trying to develop trust. I had several different, you saw on the show that my office was very open. The door was always open.
I did, yes.
I allowed them to be themselves and to show up whoever they were, in that
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
And I tried to portray to them that on a daily basis that the four walls of my office were safe. And so you can come in, and if you need to, lay on the floor and throw a temper tantrum, lay on the floor and throw a temper tantrum. Like, it's safe in here.
Yeah.
And so I think that over time, they learned very quickly that I cared about them as people. And I cared about them beyond the X's and O's of football, beyond how many touchdowns and tackles they had. I cared about them as individuals and as people, and they would watch me go to bat for them. And there was some tough love involved in that. I mean, there was a relationship there, and I cared about them, but there were boundaries, and there was tough love of me making sure that they were on the right path to be successful. And I think that they knew, that hey, this woman cares about me and cares about my future.
Mm-hmm. So all this experience that you had, all this knowledge that you've gained, while you were the academic counselor, you've taken that and you've used that to write a book called Next Chance You, that offers tools and tips for overcoming obstacles and developing a growth mindset. Can you share a few of them with us?
Yeah, I think the first chapter in the book is show up. That was always the first rule, I guess, that I had with athletes. In the academic setting, my rule was you're going to go to class. And, that's where we're going to start, with learning how to set your alarm, get up, and show up for your classes.
Attendance in life is mandatory. That's the phrase that you use. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would tell them, you're not going to make the best grade possible in a class you don't attend. Mm-hmm. And I feel the same way about life. Right now it is super sexy and super popular to be talking about mental health and be talking about being your best self, and it's okay to not be okay. And all of those things are true.
Yeah.
However, we can't talk the talk if we're not actually actively showing up to walk the walk.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the part we're missing out on. We're missing out on actively showing up for our lives. And that doesn't mean the things that are comfortable or the things that we like. We'll show up for work because we feel like we're good at that. And so we'll dive into work and we'll be present and we'll go hard and give 100% at work. But then we go home and we don't give to our relationships at home.
Right.
We or the opposite of that, or we don't give to ourselves, and so we're unhealthy and mentally and physically, and I think we have to step back and look at, I call it in the book, the wicker baskets of our life. We have to really be honest with ourselves about all the areas of our lives. What are they? Are they relationships, work, self-care, fun? I mean, what are the areas that make up your existence?
Right.
And then I think we have to be sure that there's balance and that we're giving actively to each area. And I think that's how you show up for your life. I also talk in chapter 1, right off the bat, the tough love component, I hit people with the phone. I went to a college campus one time and I looked at all the college students walking to class, and every single one of them had their head down. And no one was even looking at where they were walking because they were all on their phones.
Yeah.
We're not showing up for our lives if we're not looking at them. If we're in our phones and we're documenting and we're liking and we're tweeting and we're sharing, we're not actively living. And so until we learn how to put the phone down, we're not.
Yeah, that's a big problem now. That is a big problem. Definitely.
It is. Yeah. And so, that's where I start in the book, is just challenging people to get real with their own lives and to show up for it. And then, I dive into fear. I think fear is a big stumbling block for a lot of us. What are we actually afraid of? And then how do we tackle that? One of my favorite chapters is entitled Hold On. And it's the concept that sometimes in life, the best action is no action. Sometimes in life, the best action is to just sit and breathe. And it's okay sometimes to be uncomfortable. It's okay to sit in the uncomfortableness or to sit in the pain. It's okay to have feelings and acknowledge the feelings and deal with the feelings. I think in this hustle bustle of this world today, we don't feel our feelings, We
tend to numb them, or ignore them.
Right. And I think, in that chapter, I talk about stopping and sitting and asking yourself, what am I feeling? Like, what is actually going on inside of my body right now? Sure. And sometimes that's the best thing, is to just hold on, and wait for things to pass, or wait for the feeling to change, rather than numbing it or dismissing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I end the book with some positivity. I end the book with, dreaming big and never giving up. And I talk in those chapters about representation and how important it is and why it's important for all of us to be represented. It's important for a child to see other people who look like them succeed. And so those 2 chapters are really about that, about finding your dream, finding your thing, and then climbing the ladder, to get there. Putting in the work. I have a concept that's called the magic wand syndrome. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of us are sitting around waiting for someone else to wave the magic wand to save us. And so in the book, I challenge people to be their own hero and to realize that there's no magic wand. The only magic wand is the one that we have inside ourselves. We're here to be our own hero and to save ourselves, and no one else is going to dive in and do that for you.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And what would you say is the most important quality for someone who wants to really win in life, who wants to develop that winner mindset that you helped all these students develop while you were counseling them?
I think you really have to understand that you have to be willing to do the work. And there's nothing in life that doesn't require work. There's not, there's nothing. And I think we all want, we're a society that's looking for a quick fix. Oh yeah. We're a society that's looking for some magic pill and that's going to make us rich, or that's going to make us skinny, or that's going to make us smart. There's not one. And the reality is we have to be willing to do the work for our own lives to be successful. And sometimes it's easy work. Sometimes it's hard work. Sometimes life is great. Sometimes life is hard. And that makes us human, and it makes us normal. And I think sometimes we want this, we want to put out that if life is hard, then you've
You're
messed
doing
it
something
up.
wrong. You're doing
You've
something
made
wrong.
it hard. And
Yeah.
that's a lie. Life is hard, and it's hard for everybody. And we're all a product of our experiences, and it's hard at different times, and there's valleys and there's mountains.
Sure. A lot of people think it's a linear process, the road to success, yeah. And it's not, right? You got, as you said, there are these peaks and valleys, and that's totally normal.
Exactly. And, people that have been successful have also been failures. I mean, they didn't get to the success without at some point failing. And that's okay. It's normal and okay. And I just think we've done a poor job of showing people, of normalizing failure and normalizing mistakes and normalizing, the fact that there are valleys in life.
Right. And I think in the media, they don't really show all that hard work and all the failures that the successful people go through, I mean, now there's more and more of that, but and I think especially the younger generation, they get this wrong impression that that they got successful overnight, because they don't see all this blood, sweat, and tears that went into becoming who they are.
Right. I say it to young people all the time. Nobody puts their crap on Instagram.
No, they don't. They don't, right? You see,
I don't wake up and post my bad day on Instagram. Like I'm so you can't, when you start that comparison mindset, you're comparing your worst moment to somebody else's filtered, absolute best.
It's deadly. It's deadly. It really is.
It is. It's traumatizing how now we have it everywhere. That comparison of fake to real. I talk about it in the book, but I remember years ago when it became, I don't know, People magazine did a thing where they challenged celebrities to appear in People magazine without makeup on. And it was that.
Okay.
It was like this, and they did it. I think another magazine did it where people were food, and and so you were kind of showing all of your flaws, and I remember the moment of like looking at the magazine and you're hopeful and devastated all in the same moment. It's like, that's what Julia Roberts looks like, and you're like, what? but all of a sudden the facade that people wake up like this, that she woke up beautiful, is over when you're looking at her without makeup on. But I think, that's kind of what the truth, and it's kind of that we need a little bit of that, a little bit of no one woke up like this. We all fought and worked and grew to this level.
Yeah. I mean, they can motivate you. You can see them as role models or someone you'd like to aspire to, but I think, being careful about comparing yourself to where you are now to where they are, and not taking into account the fact that they took many years to get to where they are. I think that's when things can get a little bit dangerous and impact your self-esteem and your confidence.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And I want to talk to you about a really great initiative that you started. It's called 10,000 Pencils. In that organization, you aid at-risk youth in high schools and colleges in the U.S. Can you please tell us a little bit more about that? What really goes on in that project, and what do you hope to achieve?
So I saw a lot of athletes that came to college unprepared in a lot of ways. And one of the ways that they were unprepared was they showed up to college with a backpack. And that backpack might have contained 2 pairs of clothes and a toothbrush, and that was it. And that was all they had. They were standing there and they wanted the opportunity and they wanted to be successful, but they literally didn't even have a pencil. And I would see these kids walking into this opportunity without the resources needed for it to be successful. And it broke my heart, because you realize that no matter how hard they try, they're fighting an uphill battle without the basic resources needed for this to be successful. And sometimes it's just a pencil. And so
Right.
I started with that question. I would ask athletes all the time when they would be walking into a class, hey, do you have a pencil? Hey, do you have a pencil? You watch the show, I say it thousands of times, do you have a pencil? And I would simply hand athletes a pencil or a notebook or a piece of paper or whatever resources they needed to be successful. I had them in my office, and I would tell them at any time, come get what you need. You've got to have the basic resources. And so when I left the show and I started my own company, I decided to name it 10,000 Pencils, after Malcolm Gladwell's concept in Outliers of 10,000 hours of effort.
Oh, that's where it comes from.
Yeah. That's where it came from. That's where the name came from. So, but the company is based on that notion that academic issues aren't really academic issues, that a lot of times students who have behavior problems in a school setting, or who have this inability to really learn at the rate of other students, it's usually a social and emotional need that's not getting met.
Okay.
That's blocking them from learning. And sometimes it's the basic resource of not having a pencil, or not having, the calculator that everyone else has. And so that's 10,000 Pencils. I travel around the country and work with different schools, teaching administrators, coaches, teachers, how to really develop relationships with students and to see them as more than a statistic,
just like you did when you were
right.
Yeah.
Right. And really challenging these schools to look at the social and emotional needs of our students and how we can help to meet those needs, and then focus on the learning part after that, to really look at the student as a whole person. I think when you start to do that, then you can help the student to learn, but you can't ask a hungry 10-year-old who hasn't eaten in 3 days to sit down and focus on passing a math test. Their brain
you can. Yeah.
will not allow them to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important for schools to move in that direction, where we're really looking at social and emotional needs.
Okay. And are these institutions, are they responsive to the program? Are they willing to cooperate?
They are. I think that one thing with 10,000 Pencils, and being from Mississippi, I lived in the poorest state in our country, and I worked in the second poorest county in the United States for 8 years of my life. So we didn't have resources either. We weren't I didn't have a multi-million-dollar budget with fancy software to get things done. And I think a lot of times schools look to that, how much money can we spend in order, and then whoever spends the most money is the school that's helping the students the most. And I come in from a different approach. I'm not selling you anything. I don't think you need money to make what I sell work. I think that you need people who are willing to do their job and to have relationships with students. I think that you can do this without fancy software and without a multi-million-dollar budget. You've just got to have the right people on your staff, and people that really want to impact children's lives. And if you really want to do that, it doesn't cost you a thing. You can go in and do that every day. And so I love that. And I love being able to work with those types of schools that haven't been able to have help before because they can't afford, the help, or they can't afford the fancy software. And we're not coming in selling that.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're more open to you, right? When they realize that you're not out to, that you're not selling them anything.
Exactly. It's not about, you can do this with a hug and a,
it's just small things like that. It matters. Yeah.
Right.
And
exactly.
Brittany, do the students that you were with in the past, are you still in touch with them?
I am. I'm in touch with a lot of them.
Okay.
It's the same. You think about our own lives, and you're really close to someone. You may have had a teacher that you were, or a professor in college that you're really close to, and you maintain.
I have a couple of them. Yes. It's funny that you say that you should look at the student as a person. And my favorite teachers were the ones who did that. They saw me as a person.
Exactly.
And they were invested in my personal development. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
And you probably don't remember the grade you had in the class. You may not even remember what they actually taught.
Now, I remember how they made me feel.
So. Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I do have a relationship with a lot of the students that I've worked with. The older they get, the less that relationship becomes, because other people start to fill that space. And that's the hard part for me. I want to have that relationship and know what's going on in their life forever. Yes. But they grow up and they get families of their own and they get other people in their lives. And then, I go further and further down the list. So.
Oh, I'm sure they have a special place for you in their heart, though.
I hope so. I certainly have one in mind. So.
Were any of them in the movie? In the documentary series?
Yes. So I worked there for 6 years before we started filming the documentary. And so obviously those athletes that were with me the first 6 years are not in the documentary. But there were 2 seasons of the documentary where, there were the athletes that I was working with were in the documentary as well. And I think the world loved them, fell in love with them just as much as they fell in love with me. So most of them I do communicate with still. I think there was just a special bond formed with us being on that show together. And so most of them I do still communicate with.
Yeah, it's a very special kind of dynamic that you share with them. That really came through when I watched it.
Well, and there's nothing like being thrown into a TV show together and no one had a clue what we were doing. And so there's just something, that group of season 1, that group of athletes and I think there's just a bond there that is like no other.
Yeah, I can imagine. All right, Brittany, that brings us to the end of our conversation. Thanks for all the inspiration you've given us. And I have to say that it's so wonderful that there are strong role models like you out there helping young people to succeed and thrive. I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
All right, so Brittany's book, Next Chance You, is available at all major bookstores, and you can also visit her website, brittanyWagner.com. The link will be in the description box. Brittany, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks. You too. I appreciate it. It was fun.
It was fun. Bye.